Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Passionate People and Preposterous Peeves. I'm your host, Ike, and before you get too sucked into this awesome interview, do us both a favor and like, subscribe, and share this amazing piece of entertainment because I am here with the one, the only, Peter!
Glad to be here.
So, Peter, do you have a favorite dad joke?
Well, what's one word for just the general vibe you got right now?
I don't know.
Nice to meet you. I don't know. I'm Dad.
I did not actually expect that one, even if it is the oldest one in the book. Well played, Sha. Well played.
I mean, we love a classic, don't we?
I mean, that's what we're all about, them classics. Speaking of classics, do you have a favorite underutilized word?
Communalism.
Can I get a definition?
The definition I'm usually working off of is a political philosophy derived from a thinker named Murray Bookchin, who, grew up in New York and then moved to Vermont after around the 60s or 80s, between that time. And he another synonymous term is for the same political philosophy is social ecology, which is a theory that we're in a world with a natural crisis going on, and to resolve that crisis, human beings should criticize their relationship with nature as it has been over the past hundreds and thousands of years, and how it should be in the immediate future, which is that it should be a symbiotic relationship where human beings benefit from stewarding nature, and nature benefits from the stewardship of human beings.
Whoa, that is it's a heavy answer there, my friend.
I mean,
But
the other aspect is that another huge part of it is direct democracy. So that's where the communal aspect comes in.
it still sounds very heady. But if I'm unpacking this correctly, it kind of sounds like the golden rule to the most logical end step as best served for not only the human community but like the community of that is like Earth and its critters.
Yeah, just take the golden rule and times it by 100.
Right on, right on. All right. Do you have a movie that you will never skip when channel surfing, Netflix, thumbing through, or YouTube, scrolling?
Um, the last movie I tried to watch a part of but ended up finishing was The Hateful Eight. I thought I was just gonna watch one scene, but then as soon as the scene carried on into the next scene, I like leaned forward in my seat and watched it all the way through to the credits. It's a long movie, but any part I start in it, I finish it. It's addictive.
I totally know exactly what you mean. That's me with Scott Pilgrim versus the World. If at any point if I watch like one scene on YouTube, I watch 10. If I watch any part on Netflix, I end up just going back to the beginning and watching the whole entire thing, or watching it from that point on if it's early enough on. So I totally get you there. Hateful Eight's a banger and just definitely does carry from moment to moment just so well. What would you say is your biggest everyday temptation?
Coffee.
Can't live without it.
Can't live with it. Can't live without it. Just warm, bitter, energizing.
Do you take it? You prefer it hot as opposed to cold?
Oh, absolutely. Can't stand cold coffee. I mean, I can tolerate it, but it's never my first choice. My first choice is always hot coffee, and usually close to black. I never drink it all the way black unless I'm like just at some place where sugar is inaccessible. Like I remember the first time I started drinking black coffee was just on a plane to Australia, where of course it was that situation of, oh, I would have to ask the stewardess to come back and give me some sugar or some cream, and I don't want to do that. I just want to drink the coffee. So that was a coming of age moment, I think.
Had to move beyond that sweet tooth to just that Sweet, sweet addiction.
Oh, and you wouldn't believe how much of a sweet tooth I had as a teenager. I would count the sugar I put in my coffee back then in seconds.
The like the time pouring,
Yeah.
just like over in. So, do you have a preferred like go-to coffee spot where you live here in Los Angeles, or is it just wherever is closest on that day?
It might be wherever's closest. I am more of a convenience person than a quality person, but there are so many coffee places near where I live that I can actually give people a tour. Like, if they want to get coffee with me, like, come on up to my spot in the valley, and I'm gonna take you on a walking tour to see all eight of them, at least eight. There might be more than that.
Uh, I had a thing there. I had a thing to see. Um, Hey, how many cups a day are we talking here? Are we talking or just like one in the morning gets you going? Do you have to refill? Is there ever such a thing as too much? What are we kind of aiming at here?
The exact number is 2 cups, and even more exact is 16 ounces total. So each cup is 8 ounces. I've got this tiny old coffee maker I've had for like 15 years, and it's still kicking.
Do you prefer to make your own, or is it just, you were saying you weren't that high on quality, but I know a lot of people like to, they have their own way of doing it that, if they have to go out, if they're in a rush or if they're kind of like feeling up in the morning, they'll go out, but a large percentage of the time they prefer to make it themselves. Where do you kind of lie on that spectrum?
Yeah, it's mostly the convenience thing. I've got, like I said, it's the coffee maker. Set it up, turn it on, let it go, and then you've got some coffee. The only time I'll like give up on that and go out and get some coffee just for me if I don't have any guests to entertain is like if I've got the coffee maker in the dishwasher, or well, not the entire thing because there's electronics, but the part
Yeah,
that the coffee goes in, that is, and then you pour it. You got to wash that. You keep it clean.
totally get you. Growing up, did you have a favorite book that you liked to read, or that was like a kind of first foray into like the novel experience?
Oh, I love the Narnia books, Chronicles of Narnia, that series. Um, I think especially when it got into the maybe the middle or the later part of that series, where it was not the original group of kids. There was a little bit more complicated subject matter, and that the author had, like grown some chops to like tell a really like intricate and less by the numbers story.
We're talking like was a a man and his horse, a boy and his horse, and like kind of like Prince Caspian stuff like that, or about the
Yeah,
time
Prince
it's about.
Caspian. Yeah,
If you had to evacuate your house, what's the first non-living thing that you'd grab and rescue to safety?
my phone.
Just all the important data, or is like your phone in some way other special?
I mean, I feel like my phone is an extension of my body at this point. Real cyberpunk shit. Like, that's the other half of my brain is access to the internet and communication and note taking and taking photos, navigating where I am geographically. It's huge.
All right, this just brought a random question to my brain. How much money would have to be in your wallet that if a robber gave you the option of give me your phone or give me your wallet, how much money would have to be in your wallet for you to give him your phone?
$1,000.
All right. Seems about right. Do me a favor. Clear your mind. Now, what comes to mind when I say underrated?
Inherent Vice.
This is the Paul Thomas Anderson flick all like 5, 6 years ago, right?
Yeah, I mean, cause people like PTA's movies, but very few people rave about Inherent Vice. But I'm sure we're gonna get into that in the later part of the pod.
I do declare you are correct. What's your favorite industry secret or term that is only used in your line of work?
I think it's probably sort of the romance of cinema cameras as like a machine, a piece of art, because when you're first introduced to them, they are like this romantic object of, oh, whoa, look at the camera, and you ask how much it is, and someone tells you, oh, that's $40,000. But then when you start interacting with them as like a technician, it's really just an expensive box with wires and a piece of glass on the front. And it's not until you get even more experienced that you can make that expensive box and glass on the front with wires coming off it look pretty and romantic again. I personally never reached that level of experience so far, but I know people who have, and they do very good work.
That's awesome. Is there a piece of advice you've been told over the years that has made the biggest impact on you, or that you find yourself pondering even to this day?
Doubt everything, but also give everything the benefit of the doubt.
That's awesome. I love that. Those kind of, I love the kind of like rigmarole sound pattern of like those like full circle like life lessons, especially when they actually like hold water. That's like so cool. It's just and like it does. I have been told similar things over the years, and it really does. You know, you got to give everything a chance and also be skeptical. Like that kind of like idea of basically 1 foot on base and like 1 foot off is just like so true. It keeps you not you don't want to be too far in one direction, basically, right? You don't want to be like a homebody that is like leery of everything on the outside, and you don't want to be so far outside that you're never at home.
Yeah, and that's the way that it works, of course, too, is that you have these two things of doubt and benefit of the doubt, and the third thing that you encounter, whatever it may be, is what leans you in one direction or the other.
Totally. That's so beautiful, man. All right, given the opportunity, what is your favorite personal anecdote to tell?
Oh, that would be the night I missed the last train. So what had happened? This was back in December, after a little movie night at my friend Milosh's house. And we were having a good time, having like a real heady discussion about the movie we just watched, which was The Last Black Man in San Francisco. And of course we were all like digging into the themes, drinking wine, so and so. So of course I lost track of time. It got close to midnight, and I was like, "Oh, I need to go." And my friend Tiana was like, "Oh, I'm leaving too. You want to ride to the train station?" I was like, "Yeah, I'll take one." And so T dropped me off at the train station. I get down, and I look up at the board to see when the next one's arriving, and it says 4 a.m. I'm like, oh no.
Didn't want to wait that long?
Oh no. Oh no, wait, that would be 4 hours sitting in a train station. So I was like, okay, I can get home faster than that. I'm sure I can. I go back up. I of course know where I am more or less. I'm like, okay, if the train's not coming, maybe I can catch the buses. I check the bus on my phone. I check Google Maps, and it says you will have to wait 30 minutes for a bus. So now I've got two different wait times: 4 hours, 30 minutes. Both of them are unacceptable to me. So I'm like, all right, fuck it. I'm gonna get a scooter, get one of those e-scooters. I'm gonna ride that as all the way home. It's only 6 miles, right? And so I find one. I start heading north. And if you know anything about the geography of Los Angeles, you're like, okay, well, heading north on this part of the grid, I can get to where I need to go, and then turn west and go that way, then go north again to get back to the valley. And so I'm going north. This is the first part of that zigzag that I need to do. And I go a little too far because I was supposed to turn left on Hollywood Boulevard, but I kept going north because I didn't notice it. And I get all the way to the gates of Griffith Park. So definitely too far. And so I'm like, all right, this is not where I'm lost again. I turn around, go back down to get to Hollywood Boulevard, but I pass by this pack of coyotes, and they're having like a powwow. They're yipping and yapping, and I'm like, all right. And then also a raccoon darts out in front of me. So there was that moment, of course. But I get to Hollywood Boulevard, turn right. I'm going. the other detail you should know is I did not have a scooter with a full battery. You know, the full battery on these is like a 16-mile range, something like that. This was like less than half. And so I'm riding it on Hollywood Boulevard, and I run the battery all the way to 0. Unless I ran into some sort of geo boundary, which I know that I did because it wouldn't let me end the ride and lock up the scooter. So I actually had to drag the scooter across the street to end the ride and stop the clock. Oh, it was there was that, of course. So no more scooter at this point. I'm walking on Hollywood Boulevard, heading west. I checked the bus schedule again. Still a 30-minute wait somehow. It's so weird. So I pop into the Frolic Room on Hollywood and Vine, and I order a beer. And the moment after I get the beer, bartender says, "Last call." And I'm like, oh man, I'm out late. But of course, then one of the regulars sitting next to me gives a story about like, do you know where this wall art comes from? Like, this is Hollywood late night shit, right? Finish my beer, close my tab, get out of there. I know how to get back to the valley. I know the late night bus that's on Hollywood and Highland will take me where I need to go. And so I walk a little further west and get there. I catch that bus. I also fall asleep on that bus. And I get so deep into the valley. I get to like Canoga Park. I'm like, fuck. I'm the last person on the bus. The bus driver woke me up. And so I get off and I'm like shivering. And it's so cold and I'm so mad at myself. And I finally give in at that point and order a Lyft. And the Lyft driver was really cool. We talked about sci-fi TV shows. So the lesson of that story is...
don't fall asleep on a bus.
Well, it's not just that. It's don't miss the last train. Don't fall asleep on the bus. If you want to get home quickly, don't be stubborn and refuse to order a Lyft or an Uber. But
or wait for the bus.
If you do order your Lyft or an Uber, you won't have a story to tell.
It's a very fascinating, like, there's so many different, it's like such a, I mean, obviously it's a realistic parable because it is, it was your reality, but it's kind of cool to look at the different ways, the kind of takeaways, that would be like a great kind of story to tell, like a 10th grade English class at like a high school and be like, all right, what's the lesson Peter should take away from this experience? And just like see the different hand raising, because there are so many, like, it's like you could make an argument, like, obviously, like, one of the arguments is, pay attention to the time, like, to set set an alarm or something like that of like when you need to like leave to catch the last train, or it's, like, wait 30 minutes for a bus, or and there's like so many different ways that you can like kind of look at it and like extrapolate, like a life tenet to, take with you.
Well, you see, and from what you just said there, I'm like, can they turn this into a math problem?
If Peter doesn't wait for the bus and instead takes a half-full scooter and is confounded by coyotes, what will happen?
How many minutes?
Oh, that was terrific. All right, what is your favorite little-known fact?
Lobsters only grow larger and more fertile with age.
So, like an 80-year-old lobster is just like a sex machine?
A huge sex machine.
Lobsters go well with wine and for good reason.
You can't see it, but I'm putting my hands up like Neil deGrasse Tyson, like, I'm not going to say anything.
That's so awesome. Can you think of the first or most impactful memory of when you realized you weren't so alone in the struggle, or you were more like everybody else than you had previously realized?
I think it was probably when the pandemic started, because, like, that was like thousands of people getting laid off from their jobs suddenly being just as broke as I was for years. And I'm like, oh, finally, there's people are gonna get it, and also that they're gonna be locked up in their houses for days and weeks on end. Because I mean, like before the pandemic, that was still my life. Like I wasn't locking myself up because there was a disease out there. I was locking myself up because I didn't want to go out in the world and spend money. I was trying to save my money. Like, uh, man, yeah. And so that was like a almost a formative experience of like I needed to do something, and that's when I used that time in lockdown to start getting into my activism, try to change things. I mean, probably the biggest way of describing my whole like activist mindset is that I want to teach people how to be good at being poor, because we're in a circumstance where a lot of people are suddenly just broke because of circumstances that are outside of their control.
All right, I need to reset this question
Sure.
because I keep asking it. Like I just I cannot get this to be the way I want it to do. But the question is of like when you saw yourself, like when, like, for instance, for me, I thought for the longest time that I had a problem with public speaking and that I was super rare. Like I had this I started trying to do like stand-up comedy, and I started trying to do like and like taking classes for just like normal class and doing any kind of presentation. I would get I would literally get like my throat would like close, and I would start to like hyperventilate, and I would like when I would finally sit down from doing like a minute of prepared stuff, or something I was reading off a piece of paper, I would be like dizzy and have a headache. And for the longest time, I thought that was a me only problem. I was just like, "Oh my God, what is wrong with me?" And then through talking to some friends and my brother, they're like, "No, that's a human problem. This is not a you thing. This is a human thing. You're not some weirdo. You're not some strange case. You're just experiencing reality. And like this isn't something should beat yourself up about. This is a completely normal experience. You are not alone. You are not weird. You are okay." And like that's kind of what I mean by this question is like, when did you realize that the experience you were having wasn't this unique kind of, oh God, am I an alien? Is there, am I like the 0.001% that's the only person like having this, kind of weird or bad thing happen to them, that you realize that, oh no, this is, everybody's like this. This is not everybody, but I mean like this is an experience that is felt by plenty of persons.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure how to really like bring it around because like my whole like experience of living with poverty in a major American city is like easily like dispelled of like you're not alone in this. Like take the bus once. You're gonna meet other people who are going through similar shit. Or go to a welfare office, see how many people are waiting, and you're waiting too. You're in the same seats. Stuff
So
like that.
so when did you first like realize that you were in a financial crisis, or that you were poor? Is that something that you've kind of experienced your whole entire life and just like kind of known from jump, or is that something that you found like later in life when you were like, "Oh shit, I'm poor"?
Well, I did have to be woken up from it because, like, growing up, I guess I was in like a middle of the road, middle class household. It wasn't until I like got out of college and into the workforce that I had to start waking up to that of like budgeting every month, and then it wasn't until like I was at a little kickback at my friend Roger's place, and I told him how much money I make in a year. And he's like, "Oh, you're living in poverty. That's the federal poverty line." I'm like, "Oh, okay. How much do you make?" And he's like, "Four times what I make." I'm like, "Oh, all right. Yeah."
Yeah, like that's kind of the
But you do have to swallow that pill,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, but I mean that's a pill to be swallowed, but like did when you had that moment, did, as much as it was obviously, it's not great to be told that by the way you're broke, or by the way that you're living below the poverty line. That's probably not the best kind of news. But when you heard that, Was there a sense of relief or kind of like, oh, that is like my issue. It's not that, X, Y, or Z. It's that this is the problem that I didn't like, really realize.
Yeah, I think in a way, because the like before he said that, and like the actual statistics and like legal definitions of it, like um, I didn't have a measuring stick before then. Of like, I didn't know how much money other people made. I didn't know how much rent other people were paying compared to me. I was just like, isn't this what it costs? Isn't this what people make? But uh yeah, no, like once you have the measuring stick and you're like, oh, I'm all the way down here compared to everyone else, okay, now I can start like figuring out next steps, because there's no next steps if you don't have your measuring stick.
Yeah, you really do have to like, without scale, there is no understanding. It's not until you realize the it's not until you realize how deep the well you're in of how long the rope you need to get out.
That's a good metaphor for it. Yeah.
Why, thank you. All right. Lastly, before we throw it to a commercial break, if you could have the listeners of this podcast hear one song of your choosing, which would it be?
That would be Skip Tracing by Mild High Club.
Earlier, before before the podcast started, we were talking about this, and you said that that you kind of wanted to like expound on that, or that there was a particular reason why you had chosen this track, right?
Yeah, there's a reason I chose this track. It's for two things. That, of course, today we're going to be discussing hippie detective movies, and the name of the song is Skip Tracing. That's something that PIs and detectives do. I don't have an offhand definition for it, but it is like, honestly, like sketchy investigative work that can be kind of dangerous. I think there's the definition. You just pull it up. Skip tracing is the process of locating a debtor who has skipped or left town. And of course, the band name Mild High Club, that brings the hippie element into it. So it's a song and artist that says hippie detective right there. Different words, same meaning.
That's so cool. It's so perfect for this episode. All right, and with that, we're going to throw it to our first break. Feel free to stick around and enjoy this totally real commercial, or take a minute to enjoy Skip Tracing by Mile High Club. Or if you really want to hear a song from a previous episode, please check out the playlist on Spotify, Passionate People and Preposterous Peeves Podcast, Song Rex. It's a long title, I know. Don't worry, there's a link in the description. Either way, see you in a jiffy. Do you ever find yourself sitting around with an emptiness inside your soul or larger than preferred vacuous space? Would you like to change that? I thought so. Now introducing Stuff. For when you have nothing to do but important things. Stuff. For when you're lacking personality and intrigue. Stuff. When the world has taken a pickaxe-sized chunk out of your heart. Stuff. And if Stuff no longer fulfills these needs, please don't hesitate to look into our life-enhancing product, Addiction. And we are back. I'm here with Peter. Peter, what is your passion?
I love hippie detective movies, or more broadly, like the hippie detective genre. It's not huge. I think it should be bigger. But some examples of hippie detective, movies, TV shows, even books. There's at least one book. I have it with me. Let's start there, which is Thomas Pynchon's famous book, Inherent Vice, which was then adapted into a film by Paul Thomas Anderson in 2014. It's one of my favorites. In fact, I would say it's probably my favorite movie of all time. Of course, some other hippie detective type things are, of course, The Big Lebowski. That's one, and of course the elephant in the room when it comes to hippie detective as a genre is the Scooby-Doo franchise. It's the oldest,
obviously
biggest one in the stables. I think you could even expand a little further from there. Some things that are like almost hippie detective, but not quite, like the show Lodge 49, which is in many ways like meant to be a big homage to all of Thomas Pynchon's books. especially with like, the main character is kind of a hippie. He's kind of a detective, but he's just more of just like a guy living in Long Beach. Uh, and the name too, Dud. Like he's a botched product. It's a great name for a main character in a sort of like slacker type show. Other close ones.
What about like
be...
Psych? Does that fit in that canon or not so much?
Which one?
Psych.
I haven't seen that.
It's a it's kind of like it's kind of like a misdirect of a show, but the main character is basically pretending to be a psychic and like helping the local PD kind of like solve crimes, but has that kind of laissez-faire attitude that like a kind of stoner would without the inherent vice.
Yeah, some other edge cases I can think of would be like Under the Silver Lake, that movie, because again, the character's not exactly a hippie because it's taking place in 2017 or whenever. And it's not exactly a detective movie, but there is a mystery that the main character's, following down the rabbit hole. Um,
What about The Big Sleep with Humphrey Bogart? Does that one count? Because like the main character is very much, from what I remember of my viewing of it, it has been days and nights since, but from what I remember of it, it was kind of like the character's kind of like very chill the whole entire time, doesn't seem to take things too seriously, has that kind of universal mind, if you will, in that he sees the world as a more kind of, is somebody that if they were in nowadays would, think of the world as being one of many realities, that kind of mindset.
the Big Sleep is, to put it in like evolutionary terms, it's the common ancestor of all hippie detective movies and shows and stories. Because the main character's not a hippie, and it's before hippies existed. Um, like I don't know what you
More of a
call it.
beatnik
Beatnik
detective joint. Yeah.
But of course, like for the filmmakers of the Coen Brothers and PTA, they both cite The Big Sleep as a huge inspiration to both of those films, Inherent Vice and The Big Lebowski, big in the name, because it is sort of like a meandering mystery that unfolds that you actually have to follow all the threads, and you still might not have answers at the end.
Like this guy. So when did you first get into uh hippie detective movies? Like how old? Do you remember?
I know that when I went to college, I was in film school, so watching movies, even when I wasn't told to, was homework, was studying. And of course, everyone tells you, watch The Big Lebowski. Um, and it's even better that I was going to college in the San Fernando Valley where much of The Big Lebowski takes place. So it was like, they go to the In-N-Out in North Hollywood, and I'm like, I know where that is. And that's where, they
I can go there too.
Yeah, yeah. I'm gonna go there and bash someone's brand new Corvette with a crowbar, get yelled at. That's I can relive the movie experience.
Cross that off your film school bucket list.
Check. Uh-huh. So that was a start to it, along with like many hundreds of movies I watched throughout my 4 years in school there. And of course, I think it was my last year or getting into my senior year of college where Inherent Vice did come out around Christmas 2014. So it was like right between 2014 and 2015. I graduated in 2015, so that was like fresh on my mind while I was doing my senior project, which was to write, direct, and edit a short film. I made my short film about UFOs, but also about like broken relationships, and just had the two themes play with each other. You could have all the dialogue in there had subtext that could work on either part of the subject matter. It was a lot of fun.
Sounds awesome, man. So before you got into film school, this was not even like, did you know about this as a genre, as like a kind of like, an aspect of the film noir genre, or is this something you'd never experienced before seeing, you know, uh, The Big Lebowski?
Yeah, before film school, I only like interacted with like stoner comedies, which can almost traipse into the same area, but not quite usually. So it was more of like a revelation of like the coming of age moment of like being on my own in Los Angeles and sort of like being let go to like go and do whatever I want and explore the nooks and crannies of this city and feeling like I'm just like this sort of tumbleweed tumbling around.
That's so beautiful, man. So I guess trying to formulate thoughts in my brain, and they are taking their time. Uh, if you were going to pitch somebody on watching on why they should like, let's say you were at, you're in like a group setting with some like kind of newer friends, or like this new friend has come into the fold who's visiting or whatever, and it's movie night, but you only get to choose one movie. How would you sell him on your genre?
I mean it. I mean it points to what we were talking about a moment ago of that. You know, just a plain detective movie isn't all that entertaining, and maybe plays into the sort of like reinforcing cultural narratives of the sort of police and carceral state, and at the same time too that like stoner comedies don't necessarily tell all that interesting of a story. The main characters probably don't contribute anything too meaningful to society. But once you kind of put them together with that like throwback to the 60s and 70s for flavor, you've got a fun character going through an engaging story, and also probably contributing a good to the world.
It's an awesome way of looking at it. I love it. Does how much of so since this is a big passion of yours, how much do the neighboring kind of genres hearken to you? Like, where does film noir, like, let's play the classic fuck Mary kill with film noir, procedurals, and let's throw in stoner comedies to kind of round out the batch.
What was the first one in that batch?
So we've got film noir,
Uh huh.
we've got procedurals,
Uh huh.
and stoner comedies. We're gonna play a genre fuck Mary kill.
Okay, I'm gonna kill procedurals. That's for sure. Can't stand them. I don't want to know how the law works. And then I'm going to fuck stoner comedies. Like I don't feel that emotionally invested with them, and so film noir, I'm married to it.
That's where you feel the biggest kind of tie is with the hippie detective film, is more film noir than like say stoner comedy.
Yeah, probably because other things that I like, which aren't hippie detective movies, are like sci-fi noirs, like the Blade Runner movies. Those are noirs, but they're sci-fi noirs. You're taking two genres and you're making something very special.
It's like a beautiful relationship.
Absolutely.
What would you say is the biggest misconception about hippie detective films by the wider world?
I think that they have to be funny. I think that hippie detective movies can be deeply unsettling, and they probably should be. Paranoia is a theme that you need to play with, especially with any and all illicit substances that may play into this particular hippie detective's lifestyle.
Have you, as somebody who went to film school and is such a big fan of this genre, have you written or kind of like developed any like storylines or any kind of like on like are you like mulling on any particular like thoughts for either a film or a show, or is there anything kind of gestating in your brain in that direction?
Well, usually hippie detective films are tied into like classic Americana of the 20th century. And probably my favorite thing about Inherent Vice is one of my favorite movies of all time, and with The Big Lebowski as well, is that the question those films are meditating on is who killed the American dream. That's the bigger mystery in every hippie detective movie. And that's a mystery and a question I ask myself, a mystery I'm trying to solve, is who killed the American dream? Because I don't see it in my everyday life, not anymore, never. Or at least, like, if it was here before I uh, got to where I am.
So, if I'm understanding you correctly, the way you see in most hippie detective movies, there are actually two murders that need to be solved, or two cases that are on the docket. One is of a missing person, of a murder, of a of a more kind of pedantic human nature, and the other one is of almost like a social or a classist or like a a kind of world problem that needs to be answered and kind of pondered from time to time by the character, understated but vaguely present.
Yeah, and I think a great way of illustrating that, I brought my copy of Inherent Vice by Thomas Pynchon, and this is the first time I've ever done this. I actually highlighted a sentence in a book. I've never done this before, but now, as I'm getting close to turning 30 myself, I'm like, I'm going to become a book highlighter kind of person.
I love it.
Uh,
Thank you so much for doing that for this podcast. It's great.
and I can read the larger section that it's in if you want, but
Hit us with as much or as little as you feel like we should hear.
okay, so this is the part in the book where Doc Sportello, the main character in Inherent Vice, has been following the threads, trying to find this secret organization called the Golden Fang, where in the larger part of the story, you can't tell if it's a boat, you can't tell if it's an Indo-Chinese heroin cartel, you can't tell if it's a building, you can't tell if it's actually like a COINTELPRO type government outfit. But in this part of the book, he's discovered a tower where there used to be an empty lot, and in that tower, there's a dentistry business, and he realizes that the dentistry's main clientele are hippies who got hooked on smack, who need dental work because you got to think about what drugs do to your teeth. And so it's going here. It was occurring to Doc now as he recalled what Jason Valita had said about vertical integration, that if the Golden Fang could get its customers strung out, why not turn around and also sell them a program to help them kick? Get them coming and going, twice as much revenue, and no worries about new customers. As long as American life was something to be escaped from, the cartel could always be sure of a bottomless pool of new customers.
Well, I just shit my pants.
I got chills reading it.
That is so awesome and like freaky deaky, man. Like I'm worried that if I think on that too much, I might wake up in a cardboard box with a tinfoil hat and like understand the universe more. Like that's what that that's what that passage like makes my brain do.
Yeah. This passage will be the cop knocking on your window with the flashlight in your face.
I feel like Morpheus just offered me only the red pill.
You may take the red pill or the red pill.
Welcome to reality. There is no escape. So, do you have a favorite non-obvious aspect that you'd like to explain to the audience about the hippie detective film, unlike the way it either, operates or like some kind of, subtle, seemingly constant canonical like through line from each, favorite film and book that you've noticed?
I think what works best about hippie detective stories is that no matter when exactly they're set, whether they're set in the 60s or 70s, whether they're set in the 90s, whether they're set in the present day, and it's too late for anyone to be a hippie anymore, in the real sense. That they still apply to the present day. That there are still these characters walking around in the real world. I kind of see myself as one. And if you go anywhere like in the San Fernando Valley or down in Long Beach, you will meet some hippy dippy kind of people, and they might have like serious mystery solving abilities that they're using on something. And so that's the real through line with this genre, is that it is still really like reflective and applicable to the real world that we're living in right now, in America, and especially California. Yeah, it's very of and for the present moment.
That's so cool. You love to see art and reality kind of parallel themselves in, just not, I don't want to say coexistence because they're not on the same plane, but just like that one is not that they both are a mirror to each other. That's so freaking cool.
It's why we tell stories. We're trying to figure out what we're going through.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of it like that. That's totally true. That's awesome. That's such a cool way of saying that. That's awesome, man. Oh, dude. That's so cool.
I mean, what that reminds me of too is another edge case of Paul Thomas Anderson's oeuvre, whatever you want to call it, which is his film Boogie Nights. That's not a hippie detective movie, but it is set in the 70s, turning into the 80s, and kind of mourning that loss, because there is that exact middle part in the movie where it is New Year's 1980, and the moment it hits midnight, a character shoots themselves. That's got to mean something. The movie's trying to digest something, and the audience watching the movie is digesting it too. Yeah.
Albeit perhaps subconsciously.
Subconsciously.
All right, man. Is there anything else you want to say about the hippie detective genre before we move on to something perhaps more preposterously problematic?
I would say for the listeners, if you ever feel like you're being watched, you might be.
And with that little bit of paranoia, Peter, what is your preposterous peeve?
Well, I have and am of the belief that I am the only person in the world who can load a dishwasher correctly. I've lived with roommates. They don't do it the same way as me, and it really peeves me. They put there's things that you need to do to make this work. And it's not like other appliances. Like, there are slots where the plates go in. If you put plastic things in the wrong spot, they might melt. There is, I believe, a way of putting, silverware in upside down, which makes it harder to, or it's not that much harder, but it's a peeve. It's a tiny thing that ticks you off. Like, put the silverware in so I can see what the piece is, so I can take it out and put it in its slot in the drawer, please.
Wait, you put it in
Pointy side up.
Pointy side up?
Yeah. So I know what everything is. I don't want to grab.
But then you're gonna stab yourself.
It's fine. I don't want to grab something and have two different kinds of cutlery in my hand, but then need to put them in a specific slot.
All right, so give the audience the rundown so that they may not preposterously peeve you, and that they may rectify their culinary situation.
I mean, the point here is that what I'm saying is sometimes there's not such a thing as doing things differently. There is only such a thing as doing things wrong. And, the ways you've got to load the dishwasher all the way up, get as many plates and things in there, but you got to do it in an orderly fashion. You've got to like put the plates in the plate slots. You got to put the bowls where they fit. You got to leave lots of room up top for cups and mugs and plastic things that might melt. Yeah, like don't run it when it's almost empty. Don't put those silverware in pointy side down, or else you're just gonna peeve me.
All right, so let's say you're in a circumstance somehow somebody's emptied the dishwasher. There's nothing in there. You've got
That's the other peeve is people who don't empty it.
well, I mean, everybody is behind you on that. Obviously, if you load it, you should, or like if it's done and you're there, you should empty it. Like I think that's by and large across the board. But so you're gonna load a dishwasher. It's empty. You're gonna load it. What do you start with? Like what in what order? Give us the kind of like bionic rundown so we can't make a mistake. Wait, what are we starting with? What are we ending with? What do we do if there's like not enough room? X, Y, and Z. Give us the troubleshoot it for us.
Start with whatever's in your hands that you just used.
Yeah, I thought you wanted to start with plates and then go to bowls. No, it doesn't matter.
No. There's no order. It's just that if you have something that you just used, it's dirty. Put it in. Put it in the dishwasher. Like that's another peeve of mine is that people who hand wash things before they put it in the dishwasher, in 99 out of 100 instances, that is unnecessary. Buy yourself some like high quality detergent pods from the brand that makes those. I buy those and they like take everything off except for like eggs or cheese, and that's like 1% of the dirty dishes you're ever going to encounter. So those are the ones that need to be hand washed. A dishwasher and the right detergent will like take everything off. Like, don't waste your energy.
Okay, so you do it meal by meal until it's full, and then once it's full, you run it. Okay.
Yeah, and even like too, like if there's a meal that you want to make, but the thing that you want to make it in is dirty, make something else. It narrows your options down, especially if you're an indecisive person. Like, oh, I can't cook that because that's in the dishwasher. I'll make something else. Or I'm gonna go out to eat, whatever.
So what do you do if there is all the plate section is full, but the rest of it is like predominantly empty? So it wouldn't be a full load, but there's not in quotes plate spot left for the plate. What is your kind of fix it to that issue?
That's usually the opposite of the issue I run into. Usually the issue I run into is that the upper rack for all the cups and mugs, that's full. Almost always. And the challenge is to get enough plates and bowls in there to actually fill it up.
Okay, so let's address it, the circumstance that you run into more commonly then. All the top section is full, and you're out of cups somehow. But the rest of it is basically empty. So you don't want to run a half load. You don't want to wash it by hand, but there's all this space left. How do you move forward at that juncture?
I might like try to cook something in a big pot, or
What if you're thirsty though?
Maybe I drink out of the big pot. Who knows? That can hold a lot of liquid. It's convenient.
Okay.
That's a hippie move.
When did you first notice this being an issue for you? Was this a problem like even all the way back when you were at home, like living with your folks? Do you guys have a dishwasher then? And like this is like when that was kind of ingrained to you and like it wasn't ever a problem there because this is the way you were like, you were taught to do it? Or did you notice this being a problem even like living at home with your folks?
Living at home with my folks, it was definitely not a problem because there was never a problem of the dishwasher's full of clean things. No, it's not. It's full of dirty things waiting to be run through. So that was fine. And then in college, it was kind of like an under the surface issue because I did more like hand washing. My plates and dishes. I remember in one of my college apartments, I was like pissed off at my roommates using my dishes, so I would just have one dish and one plate, and like I would just leave them dirty in the sink so that they wouldn't use them, which is the worst, most shameful thing I can admit to now in this topic. So I'm like even peeved at myself. But yeah, it wasn't until I got out of college, graduated, entered the workforce, trying to live on my own in Los Angeles with roommates. Of oh, other people aren't seeing the like logical operation to this, the things that need to be done, and I feel like I'm the only one who knows.
That's that's amazing. I love that like game theory maneuver of okay, so if they're gonna use mine, I'll make sure that they either have to clean it to use it or that by making that a step, they definitely won't use it. So it's so big brain, love it. All right. I think we've
Oh, the one dirty dish maneuver. It's
yeah, no, that's a smart play. I mean, like it might not be the most economical or, healthy for the environment or whatever like that, but it's a big brain maneuver. I respect that. And with that newfound respect, we're going to go to our second ad break, but don't go anywhere because when we get back, Peter is going to enter the lightning round. Have you ran out of new stuff to do, rendering your life wholly unsatisfying? Do you have too much time on hand and have no idea what to do with it? Or are you just plain over this existence and wish for a plane with more intrigue? Might I introduce you to Addiction? Addiction deals with all these problems and more. Had to meet your significant other's parents and would rather not? Addiction. Had to go to work for the third day in a row? Addiction. Rent? Why not? Addiction. Addiction cannot be held responsible for your choice of choosing to imbibe in addiction. Any and all life-destroying fallout as a result of addiction cannot be legally pinned on addiction. But you're more than welcome to try. And we are back. Peter, are you ready to enter the lightning round?
Lightning round.
buzzy and, otherwise.
All right, put however much time it takes to bake this cookie on the clock. Peter, is there a God?
Probably not.
Shakira's voice in Danny DeVito's body or Danny DeVito's voice in Shakira's body?
Definitely Danny DeVito's voice in Shakira's body.
Have you ever paid more for a meal than you made in a week?
No.
You're having the best day of your life. What happens next? Another amazing thing or something terrible?
Probably something terrible.
Are hot dogs sandwiches?
Yes.
Pineapple on pizza or fist fight?
Pineapple on pizza. Delicious.
If you had the power to see the future but couldn't change it, would you use it?
Yes. It would give me good closure.
Kill the spider or get an adult?
Kill the spider.
Is there a price for you to give up your passion forever?
At least 3 million.
Kanye.
Yee.
Did you ever cheat on a test in school?
A little bit.
Which do you max out first? Intelligence, charisma, or strength?
Charisma.
Are we alone in the universe?
No.
Would you rather have your inner monologue sound like Gilbert Gottfried or Fran Drescher?
I don't know who Fran Drescher is, so probably Gilbert Gottfried.
Are Cheez-Its addicting?
Yeah.
Make the food or put the dishes in the dishwasher?
You can't choose between those two.
Would you rather fight one horse-sized duck or 100 duck-sized horses?
100 duck-sized horses. I can win.
Would 16-year-old Peter be proud of where you are today?
He'd be surprised, but I think so.
Do you create your own thoughts or do you listen to them?
Listen to them.
If you have to only have one for the rest of your life, which would you choose? Rice or pasta?
Rice.
Would you put your brain in a robot body if you could?
Yeah. I think I'd start piece by piece, more of a protracted Ship of Theseus kind of deal.
You're given the option of two superpowers. Shape-shifting, but only into a chair, or super strength, but only when you're super tired.
I want to make the chair one work.
If someone you cared about asked you to help them cover up a murder they had committed, would you help them?
I plead the fifth.
Would you rather punch a capybara or hug a boa constrictor?
Hug a boa constrictor. They'd probably appreciate the warmth.
Would you rather have the ability of flight or invisibility?
Invisibility.
Vests or opera gloves?
Opera gloves.
Could you eat 37 of your favorite food for $5,000 in a 1 hour time limit?
I don't think so.
Either way, congratulations, you've survived the
Lightning round.
But before we move on to your prize, I, like many listeners at home I'm sure, would like to know, what is your favorite food?
Sushi.
You don't think you could eat 37 sushi rolls in a 1 hour time limit?
I think I would probably clock out at 20.
I love the approximation. Well, you've survived the lightning round, so now you get to ask me a question, and in turn, I will ask future guests.
So, in this scenario, a loved one has been kidnapped under nefarious circumstances, or at least all you know is they're missing. So, who do you ask for help? The cop that you've lived next door to for 10 years, or a hippie detective that comes well recommended from a good friend?
Ooh. I mean, I'm such a contrarian that part of me wants to just say cop, but I know that's just my contrarian nature wanting to say that because you're in the room. So I'm going to fight that and be the best kind of bud and say hippie detective.
That's how I'd answer it as well. I mean, even though...
To the shock of everyone at home.
I'm sure this guy would be a total burnout and wouldn't solve the case very quickly, but I do think he would solve it ultimately.
All right, man, as we reach the end of the show, anything you want to plug, recommend, places people can find you or your content?
Firstly, keeping with the hippie detective theme, I want to recommend that if people really want some way to spend a lot of time, they should check out a podcast series called Increment Vice by One Heat Minute Productions, which, with guests, breaks down the movie Inherent Vice, scene by scene, episode by episode. I think it's something like 50 hours of content at least, and there are some surprising guests in there. The other thing I want to plug is the other podcast I actually made an appearance on for one episode is called Snails and Oysters, which is a bisexual film review podcast. The episode I was on was covering The Green Knight, the film by David Lowery.
Right on, man. All right. Well, thank you, Peter, for being my guest today. And a special thanks to my editor, Richard Ashford, and my composer, Joshua Gibbons. And thank you. Yes, you listening at home or wherever you found time to appreciate this. Time is the most precious commodity we have, and I appreciate you spending yours with us. And if you enjoy this podcast, please subscribe, like, or just share it with a friend. Every little bit helps. Or if you already have and are out of episodes to listen to, don't worry, we put out a new episode every Monday at midnight on Soundcloud, YouTube, Spotify, and iTunes at Passionate People and Preposterous Peeves Podcast. And a very special thanks are due to our first Patreon patron, Sibel Yellow. And if you'd like to join said illustrious ranks and have your name read aloud, head on over to patreon.com/Passionate People and Preposterous Peeves Podcast. And remember, folks, you put your tin in the bin and take out your shite every night. So why is it weird when I put my hat on your cat?